Never have I ever tried to become a teacher. Well, the answer would have been no before this video got uploaded, because that is what I'll be attempting to do today. Prerequisites: just a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, and just a little bit of JavaScript. That sounds quite like my resume. So we'll be making this exquisite Google Pay welcome screen ripoff. Step 1 for me is usually making the design. I take out my notebook and a pen and translate my imagination into a drawing. But in this case, I didn't have to use my imagination because I'm creating a clone of Google Pay's welcome screen. So this is how I would create the structure. This entire screen is a div element, and the children are the logo, the command title, the email container, a signal container which contains 4 individual signals corresponding to the 4 digits that the user would click. The signal container is a div with a flex layout, and each individual signal is a span. The error container, whose display is conditional. And lastly, the keypad, which is a div with a grid layout of 3 columns. Also, you can see that the digit 0 here doesn't appear in the first column. It appears in the second column. Can you do this in a grid layout? I mean, can you change the column and row configuration in a grid? Absolutely. You can easily change the column of a grid cell using the grid column CSS property. The value is an x/y format, where x is the first column line number and y is the second column line number. We want the digit 0 to start from column line number 2 and end at column line number 3. So its value would be 2/3. I often begin with dropping everything in div and span at first, and then based on intuition, replace the divs with their semantic alternatives like section, etc. About CSS, it's all about your imagination. So the user enters a 4-digit password. After entering the last digit, these signals will blink, giving an illusion that the system is checking whether the password you entered is correct. And if it is correct, we will see a different card. In that case, the current card, that is the welcome screen's display, will be set to none, and it will display another card with a success message. Now we are done with designing and structure. It's time to make it functional. And this is where it gets interesting. How do you make it functional? I mean, what is the first thing that you do? Imitate the user. Think about what the user would do first. And it's pretty easy to sync in this case. The user would enter the PIN, digit by digit. So we need a variable to store the user input. We can take another variable, which is a 4-digit string, and it is the correct password. Now, how do the user enters a PIN? By clicking on the digits, which means we would want to make these keys listen to the click events and respond. Since we have multiple keys, we can make use of a for loop and put it in a method like make keys responsive or something like that. Since all the keys would call back the same function, it becomes a challenge for us to find out which key that the user clicked. So regardless of whether the user clicked 2 or 9 or this X key, all the clicks would cause the same callback function to execute. So how do we find out which key was clicked? Well, this 2 is the HTML text of this key. This 9 over here is the HTML text of this key. So is there a way to get the HTML text of the key that was clicked? Yes. In the callback, we get access to the event object. The event object, which is pretty detailed and massive, has a property called SRC element, which stands for source element, and it is the target element on which the event occurred. On this SRC element, there's a property called inner text, which refers to the inner text of that HTML element, and challenge solved. After we find out which key was clicked, we need to update the user input variable by using string concatenation. We can create another function for this. Remember, we have to add the latest key value to the user input, not replace the user input with the latest value. But not so fast. What if the user clicked the X key? This is a backspace key. So we need an if statement to control this scenario. We can do it using another function, calling it on backspace, where we would update the user input by removing the last character. While calling on backspace, I'm also returning immediately since there's nothing else left to do in this special case. So let's think this again. The user clicked the key. We updated the input variable. Is that it? No, because we also need to highlight one of these signals to indicate to the user that you have clicked the key. So I'll just add a highlight class to the respective signal, which is an HTML span element. It just changes the background color to white. This also means that in on backspace method, we would have to remove the highlight from that signal. So we have updated the user input. We have updated the signals. We now need to check if the user has entered 4 digits. If yes, that means that the user has entered the password. What are the next steps? Let's create a function. We will blink the lights to give an illusion that the system is processing the input. And after a gap of, let's say, 2 seconds, we will stop the blinking and check if the password entered is correct or incorrect. So I've created a function for blinking lights where I'll add the signal blink class to each of the 4 signals at a gap of 500 milliseconds to give it a progressive animation look. Another function to stop the blink blinking where I'll remove the animation, or the class to be precise. If the password is correct, I'll hide the card by setting the display property to none. And if the password is incorrect, I will display the error message. So the error card has display set to none all along. This is a one time where the error card won't be hidden anymore. We would also have to reset the user input to an empty string. A very important thing that needs to be done here. When the user enters the 4 digits, we also need to make these keys not listen to the click events anymore until the system decides if the password entered was correct or not. So similar to make keys responsive function, I'll invoke another function which removes the event listener. So if the password entered was incorrect, while resetting the user input, we can make the keys click sensitive again. What about the error card? In the callback function that responds to a key click, we can add a check whether the user's input length is 0 or not, which will always be the case after every incorrect attempt, and we will hide the error card again. During reset, along with resetting the user input, making the keys click sensitive, we would also reset the signals by removing the highlight from each signal. Now you can either call the onCorrectMove function as soon as the user enters the 4-digit password, or do the same thing but in a different manner. You see, user entering 4 digits indicates that the password has been entered. So it's kind of like an event, like password typed. So we can create an event with the name password typed. Make the document, that is the root element of the web page, listen to that event and registering onCorrectMove method as the callback, and dispatch this event when the user enters the 4-digit password. It's all based on intuition. You can directly call the method as well. And that is it. If you have a different approach in mind about some functionality or design or structure, please feel encouraged to share it down below. Thanks for watching.